Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, May 31st, 2020, and today we're going to be discussing the fact that Joe Biden, in the most recent poll from ABC News/Washington Post, has officially hit double digits nationwide. He leads Donald Trump in the recent poll 53% to 43%, and I thought it would be noteworthy, considering the last time that Joe Biden hit double digits was the Quinnipiac poll back in mid-May. I decided to do this one considering that tomorrow I'm going to be updating my 2020 presidential election prediction, and I will have to take into account a number of things that are happening right now. So as we all know, there are a number of riots happening and a number of things being discussed for the Black Lives Matter movement, and I honestly think that this will all negatively affect President Trump. And to be completely honest, it probably will. Taking a look at the states that, Minnesota itself is a very Democratic state. Number one, Amy Klobuchar is going to be completely removed from the VP vetting process. You have to think that the fact that she let off the cop who killed George Floyd, to put it frankly, she let him off the hook after having prior altercations, and that's something that just recently came out on the news. And, Amy Klobuchar, if she does get chosen as Joe Biden's VP, honestly, I could see how Trump would be the new favorite to win the election. Not only does she reduce his chances before this entire situation happened, she's also going to be the center front of the entire Black Lives Matter movement for her history, and it would just add to the notion from some actually notable African-American political analysts that Joe Biden doesn't necessarily represent Black values nationwide, and just having her on the VP spot would completely rewrite the entire election in favor of Donald Trump. But when we're talking about the overall riots, it doesn't look good for President Trump. To be honest, nobody's really going to blame the Democrats for this one. Just because President Trump puts out a Democrat local official's tweet doesn't really mean anything to the American people. He's the president. COVID-19 is happening. There's a global pandemic on top of numerous protests. One's near me, 20 minutes away to D.C., to Annapolis, about police brutality. And President Trump made tweets that being viewed in a completely, or at least as much as I can be, unbiased point of view, the fact that he used the words thugs and looting means we start shooting, things like that start to negatively impact his perception from the American people. We were talking about the president comparing taking a television from Target to the equivalent of being shot. Now, I understand that there were small businesses looted and there were homes being looted, and I completely understand that, and I am very well aware of the self-defense laws. However, the American people and the Democratic Party will 100% use this. The American media and the Democratic Party, will 100% use this to attack him. And it doesn't matter the context of it. It's the fact that it's out there, and that is 100% going to already dwindle the 8% black base that he already has. And, Joe Biden's "you ain't black" comments, that could have negatively impacted Joe Biden. But this 100% will, because it's concrete, and it's alienating a lot more of the demographic that already is pretty outraged in terms of voting. This is probably going to inspire a number of people to actually take voting a lot more seriously. And anytime there's increased minority turnout, that never ends up being good news for the Republican Party, with the exception of some areas in states like Florida and some parts of the Southwest United States. But other than that, the majority Republican base, 100%, is majority white. So whether this blows over or not, and there's actually action taken by congressional leaders to appease their constituents, or President Trump makes a statement on it, Joe Biden released one this morning. Other than that, I could only see how this can negatively impact President Trump. And let's go ahead and just jump into this. The first question is how likely you are to vote. Certain to vote, probably vote, chances 50-50, less than that. So based off the recent one, 70% said that they are certain to vote. I think registered voters say 84%, so that makes more sense. I think that's all adults and then registered voters. But let's go ahead and just skip that one. That's not super important. We need to go ahead and take a look at some of the data. Wow, they go really far back. So 2020 presidential election, if it was held today, who are the candidates you would vote for? So Joe Biden is actually at his highest point since October of 2019. So when we're thinking October 2019, no primaries had occurred. Joe Biden wasn't really being attacked by Democratic leaders as heavily, but he hasn't really gotten the main attention of the GOP at this point. Yes, a lot of people did think he was going to be the nominee, but it was not the focus. The general election had not hit yet. But now, in recent polling numbers, Joe Biden has jumped up to to 53 to Donald Trump at 40. So this is the general population, which is not the one that they use on Real Clear Politics. This is just assuming adults. But then in terms of registered voters, Joe Biden gets 53% again, and Donald Trump jumps up to around 43%. So amongst those who are probably going to vote, meaning they are registered, they don't need to submit a registration form before the election or do same-day registration, whatever your state might do. Those people that have already pre-registered favored Joe Biden by 10%, and that's actually a lot higher than where it was 2 months ago. Joe Biden only led him by 2% in that poll and 6% amongst the general population. So a lot has increased for Vice President Biden. A lot of the things that have been happening in the national news have all benefited Joe Biden, and that's just a combination of factors, whether it's the COVID-19 pandemic and obviously the things that are occurring in numerous cities now, and I think they are continuing through today. It's going to be very difficult for Donald Trump to try to divert attention away from this being on his administration. Whether or not it's his fault is not up for me to decide. It's up for the American people to decide at the ballot box. And regardless, even if it isn't, or even if it is, both parties are going to try to spin it in one way or another. That's how an election goes. And right now, it looks like the Democratic Party, based off these numbers, are winning in terms of the overall, not necessarily spin game, but attacking President Trump. A lot of the Biden campaign is definitely circulated on getting out Donald Trump. That was one of the main reasons why a lot of primary voters voted for him. And the fact that they are going to continue and double down on this, that's something that is probably going to inspire a lot of voters, even though it may be the only real platform issue. When it was Joe Biden, we were talking about getting rid of Donald Trump. But when you're talking about Bernie Sanders supporters, you're talking about Medicare for all and things like that, what they want to see fundamentally change. But for Joe Biden, it was that he was most electable, he was most liked amongst the American public, and a number of factors like that. Same thing we saw with Hillary Clinton. So if the Democrats actually do this right, compared to 2016, which they definitely didn't, Hillary Clinton ran a very much anti-Trump campaign, but it didn't work. If they do it right this time, which it looks like they might be on track to do, then it'll be worth it. But let's go ahead and see. So would you definitely vote for Trump? I believe this is... asked if named Trump, would you definitely vote for Trump? Probably vote for him, or just possibly vote for him. If they chose Biden, definitely would, probably would, possibly would. So looks like Donald Trump definitely has a lot more solid of a base, 87% of registered voters compared to 74% of registered voters for Joe Biden. But if they're all voting the same way, so compared to 2016, if you would vote for Hillary Clinton. So it looks like Joe Biden's narrowly improving 1% more than Hillary Clinton. So again, that raises the question as to whether or not Joe Biden is more enthusiastic than Hillary Clinton. But once we go ahead and hit the approval ratings, I think it becomes very clear. So the enthusiasm doesn't really matter to me much, other than the fact that they are a lot more solid in terms of their support. But a vote is a vote. Doesn't matter if they're enthusiastic or not, or if they're just going over to the ballot box because they feel obligated to. Absentee ballots, do you feel somewhat strongly? Strongly support, somewhat support. So around 30% of people oppose voting by mail, which is very interesting because it actually could be a very real reality. I'm going to make a YouTube video about it sometime soon. I do need to research more about the turnout rates when we do vote by mail, but it may end up being bad news for the Democratic Party based off that California election where a lot of people did vote by mail. So in terms of approving of President Trump, he still holds a 45% approval rating. In fact, the only time he actually had a positive approval rating was somewhere around here. I believe the last poll taken 2 months ago, 48 to 46%. So this was the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Donald Trump had a net positive approval rating according to the ABC News Washington Post poll. And when you take a look at the numbers now, it has since dwindled. Donald Trump has a 53% disapproval rating and a 45% approval rating. So an overall net -8 nationwide compared to +2 just 2 months ago. So again, Donald Trump's approval rating has been getting hurt a lot more. So in terms of approving of the economy, a lot of people do approve of the economy, the way that he's handling the economy, but in terms of the condition of it nationwide, it has drastically changed. Looking at when Trump took office, he has never seen the American public view the economy in such a negative way. So on 1/15/17, 51% of Americans said the economy was in a positive state. It has since increased, and now it's at 34%. And that's obviously with a very high unemployment rate nationwide due to a number of factors, not necessarily the fault of President Trump, but it's just the way that the Americans are viewing the overall economy. So here's the favorability ratings of Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. So Joe Biden does have a higher approval rating of over Donald Trump, whereas Donald Trump obviously 55% negative approval rating to 42%. Joe Biden has a negative net 2 nationwide, but Donald Trump's net negative is negative 13 nationwide. So keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and see. So in terms of these are pretty much just honest, trustworthy type things, things that we really don't need to focus on a lot. Again, voters are voters. Coronavirus handling, that is something that needs to be important for the 2020 election. That is something that has changed for Donald Trump from being approved of by 6%, now disapproved of by 6% nationwide. Things do change. If you take a look at the way that he's handling COVID-19, it should say it here, job approval on the coronavirus, he was at a positive point at some point in time. Right when this poll was taken, he was approved of 5.7% nationwide, and that's almost exactly what this poll reflects, 6% nationwide, but since has moved into the negative. So again, this is only going to hurt Donald Trump as the COVID-19 pandemic has moved on as we progress through possibly a second wave, and that's not going to end up good news for Donald Trump. So overall, I mean, this recent poll shows great news for Joe Biden. It's the only poll that we've had since a number of things have hit the news. Obviously, the riots are going to probably be reflected in the polling data. People are probably going to be asked questions as to whether or not they approve of what's happening, the protesting and things. That's probably going to be, no, that's 100% going to be a question to be asked. But according to the recent numbers, Joe Biden is peaking in the sense that he has before, but it looks like he might be on an upward trend. It's been pretty stagnant in terms of support for Joe Biden throughout the entire month of May. It's been pretty much hovering around 4 or 5%. But if Joe Biden consistently leads by these margins, it's going to start to look like a pretty solid election. Now, I know the same thing was said in 2016. Don't get me wrong. You can't assess an election to the best of your ability, obviously, until probably a week before the election. But it's always interesting to take a look at the numbers and update you on the way that the American public is viewing this election and how they're voting in 2020. Because if this is the margin nationwide, you can believe that Biden's going to carry Texas at that point. But obviously, that's not going to happen. Joe Biden's probably going to only win by maybe at most 4% nationwide in terms of popular vote. But really all depends on the American public in November. So the only poll that really matters is the one in November. I see that a lot, but actually this just gives us a general characterization of the race at this point. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. If you guys have any special recommendations, make sure to comment them down. I'm going to go ahead and try to do some of those since I just finished that election night video. I think it's going to be, I'm going to have a lot more time freed up because of that. But yeah, so again, thank you guys for watching this video, and I will see you all later today.